Yay. Hi, guys. So grateful to have this space to connect with each other in and to feel the Lord and connect with Him. Yay. So I think what I will do, because the kids have an incredible series that they're in the middle with you, Jared, I will let you guys go to it. Have a great time. If you want to take a moment and tell the parents just a brief word, tell them what you guys are going to be doing. Make us super jealous. I heard something about
Okay, last week I made Abraham's brain smoke, I think.
Oh yes, Abraham's like, my brain hurts, and I'm like, that's a good sign.
So we learned about what physicists and quantum physicists can measure mathematically that's happening inside of an atom, and we talked about other dimensions and what would it be like for a God outside of our dimension to see us. What could He see, and what would He know that we don't know? And now this week we're going to talk about things like dark matter, like all the things that make up the universe that's way more than the stuff we can even see.
Yay.
And then we're going to talk about string theory, and we're going to talk about harmonics and all these theories about how this universe even is. And it's really interesting. It's you can pluck a string in these sort of curled up dimensions, and that's theoretically what creates matter. And it's a really beautiful vision of thinking how God, when we say God spoke and the world came to be, there's a lot of musicality to that, and there's a lot of really interesting ways that the universe might work that give us a hint into how creative He is.
Yes.
So, anyway. That's
so good. So good. Thanks. So have fun.
Have fun. The kids already left.
Kids left without
They're gone.
you, so
Like, forget this.
off and running. Yes, Minecraft next week.
Bring your tablets or whatever you can play Minecraft.
Kids bring things. If they have things, they can share. We'll figure that out. All right. So Greg and I actually have to leave a little early tonight. So as soon as we are done with the message, we are actually going to jet out. So we super appreciate everyone who's willing to help Jocelyn and the Gagnons to help clean up. But we will do prophetic practice with Lindsay. Yay! And that'll be amazing. And I don't know if the kids are going to come back for that session or not. I'm not sure what Jared has planned on all of that. But anywho, I'm super excited about our time here together and what God wants to do. And so those of you who've been traveling with us and me and Greg for a long time, I so love that you wore your purple shirt without I didn't even ask you to wear a purple shirt. You're getting so confident in yourself.
I just go through these. I've got them all lined up, and one week after the other, and
so some weeks are better than others in terms of whatever color happens to be.
Whatever is there. It means so little to me that
means so little.
That it means so much to you.
I don't know. It takes a good man to wear purple. I just like it.
It's better than the pink shirts I have. Those things are just ugly.
I know. I bought hot pink for him. He looks so good in it. We look so good together.
The color does not agree with my eyeballs. Neither does red, by the way. It's not just a pink thing.
Anyway, so sorry about that. So those of you who have traveled with us for a long time know that the whole point of this journey is to be in a present moment relationship with God. That this whole thing got started because we felt led that God was making a move in the earth, and He said, do you want to host a space where I am making a move in people's lives and the impact that could make in a community, in a neighborhood, in a city, in a state, in a nation, in a world, where a group of people would gather together and choose intentionally to look at each other and see each other the way I see them. And that they would intentionally choose to see themselves the way that I see them, and learn to see me as I truly am. And so instead of spending a ton of time learning about God, we start spending some time experiencing God and learning how to think about things in new ways. And I mentioned a video last week that I saw that Nikki had posted on Facebook, and I'm actually going to touch on that again this week, and then we're going to jump from that space. So the video was, and I don't need to not say who it was, because I think he's super convicted of his perspective. It was John Maxwell and a group of people. I'm sorry, not John, John MacArthur. My bad, thank you. I know you're like, sorry, it's the wrong guy, John MacArthur. And a group of gentlemen on a panel, and they were asked what their opinion was of Beth Moore. And the response was, and some of you already heard this last week, was that he said, go home. Beth Moore, go home. And then the word narcissist was used, and there was criticism and comments about how it's very, very clear scripturally that women should not be preaching. And I explained last week how beautifully healing it was for me to watch that video. That definitely is the environment that I grew up in. And when I watched that video here this many years later, where the Lord's walked me through a journey, I found myself no longer being angry or pressed down or feeling violated by a voice that would belittle me as a woman. And it was a beautiful time for me to kind of come into that revelation and that realization. But I also realized that that voice that I hear mocking and making fun of in that particular instance, and really questioning the motives of an entire half of our civilization, is not necessarily the voice of humanity, but a voice of violence. And that voice can turn just as easily onto any other group of people or any other person, right? That voice of violence that is willing to press down and suppress without regard. Now, I'm not talking about having convictions that disagree with mine. Hey, we get to agree to disagree. We get to agree to disagree. So I'm actually okay with the fact that he holds that utter conviction about women. I'm okay with that because you feel very passionate about it. And you're allowed to have your opinion and perspective on that, just like I'm allowed to have my opinion and my perspective on that. But it's the tone and the choices of language that's used in certain conversations like that, that is, you know what I'm talking about? The fragrance of that tone that is so belittling and almost shaming. And there's a violence in that voice. And that voice, if we allow it to take up harbor in us, becomes violent to others, and it becomes violent to our own souls. So that's like a super great beginning, right? Because I'm pointing out the places in our lives where we have agreed with something that is violent towards others or ourselves. We have done that. We have allowed a teacher, a coach, a broken situation in our life that hurt our feelings, hurt how we felt, and sometimes that voice has ridden alongside that life experience, and we have allowed it to take up residency inside of ourselves. And that voice comes out at unexpected moments, right? It comes out at our kids, it comes out at a spouse, it comes out at a friend, it comes out at a parent, it comes out at a sibling, it comes out at these inopportune moments where we say something and then we go, I wished I hadn't said that. Or it can come out at a dinner party when we think we're being funny, right? And then it's not till we're laying in bed later at night and we go, oh my gosh, what did I say? Right? It's those moments where we realize that there's a perspective and a voice that we've allowed, a voice of violence that is harmful to humanity and harmful to ourselves. We've allowed it to take up residency in us. So, oh, I just love what you're doing artwork-wise, Ava. Sorry, I get distracted sometimes because the artwork is like just so beautiful, like along with the message and whatnot. But super, super good. So make sure you swing by and see what the girls are doing. It's always really, really good. So what is that, why bring that up today? So I've been processing that for the last like week and a half, that experience of discovering that I no longer needed to take up a voice of violence to protect myself from the violent voice in someone else. Because that's what we have a tendency to want to do, is to take up a protection. When we feel like something or someone is against us, the automatic thing is to find a protection. And so I've been processing a little bit of that. And then I've been processing a little bit of, God, what are you doing in our community? What are you doing here? So that's been my own personal journey, is kind of like processing some of that, like, what was this really all about? And then also going, Lord, what are you doing in our community of people in Desert Outpouring? Like, what move are you making? I have known because you have spoken to me about what you're doing, but what are you doing today? And you all know that because we're in this present moment journey, often, even though we'll have a series, like of Job, or a series where we're doing a particular topic or a particular section of scripture, every week I go back to the Lord and go, what are you doing in here? And do you know that every week I feel pressure to perform for you all? And it's so stupid because honestly, if we were doing performance, we wouldn't be doing this. Right? It couldn't be simpler. It couldn't be more non-impressive. And we actively choose to engage in that on a weekly basis to make a space that's not impressive. To make a space that is His presence. And then we just hold that space open because, by the way, you can't make Him show up. And here's the funny thing. He doesn't show up here. He shows up in us. So we're making a space so that we can gather together for His presence to be revealed in us. In the aha moments. In the, oh, I can see differently now. Oh, and I just got healed of a physical thing or an emotional thing. A space that kind of like taps into that space inside of us that knows things that we didn't know we knew, that is connected with Him. And so anyway, I've been thinking about what did our journey look like over the past 3 years that many of us have been traveling together, and what is God doing next? And what I was hearing was, and this was really fun, He was super encouraging to me. My mind's going in 5 different directions at once. Did anybody catch that? Okay, so I'm going to pause for a moment, back up. I don't like the pressure of trying to impress people. Does anyone like that pressure? It is, I believe, a voice of violence. That I need to somehow perform in such a way to impact other people in a way that then seems good to me. There's 5 million ways that goes wrong. And it's never enough. It's never enough. So I hate that pressure. And on any given week, that pressure is stronger or weaker. But in the midst of the pressure, I refuse to listen to it. And in refusing to listen to it, I believe I'm building muscles. I'm building muscles that are developing a strength to have that voice be nothing to me. And that the only voice that gets to speak to me that matters is this gentle, sweet, good, kind, powerful, magnificent voice that says, you never have to impress anyone. And deep in you, I am showing you that you are enough. And deep in you is the capacity to know that every person you meet is enough. So every week I get pressured to create a message that will impress you all. I'm just being honest. And every week I resist it, or attempt to resist it, and not go find some dazzling thing that I think will be great. And instead I wait on the Lord to tell me what He's doing. What is He doing in our lives? Along with this passage, along with this scripture, along with whatever we have planned, what is He doing? And there are weeks where I don't know what He's doing until 10 minutes before we start. And I just build those muscles, and I don't revert to, well, here's 3 stories that I could string together with a point, and that would be good. And I'm just kind of letting you in on my process because of where we're going to go next, by the way. So sometimes I know weeks ahead of time what He's doing. And I'm able to just it's like this, I get in a boat and we just fly. And I can feel it. I can feel his presence in the moment here doing exactly what I thought he was going to do. And then there's these other times where I step into this place and the pressure is so intense to like pull out my best stories, right? Pull out the best, most engaging, the stories that worked back when I was a professional speaker, like pull out some of those, pull a good point together, and man, and we'll just glide through. And then learning how to not do that. And instead just go, I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna let you lead, I'm gonna listen in real time, I'm gonna listen and hear what it is that you want to do in our lives. So this last week was an interesting thing because for some reason that pressure was different. So I don't know about you all, but I know almost everybody in here has had some level of breakthrough recently. And then the pressure changes. It shifts, right? It changes. And you get this opportunity to demolish the thing that was once kicking your booty, right? You have that chance. And so I feel like our community is kind of in one of those places. I feel like what God's doing in and throughout our lives is something really beautiful that looks like almost nothing. It's kind of like that thing of the spies going into the promised land, and how many of them came back and said, this is not a good place, let's not venture in. Anybody remember how many? Just those little like Bible buffs? 10. 10, good guess, yay. And 2 came back, yes, yay. 2 came back, Joshua and Caleb, and said, this is a good land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Yes, there are giants, but we are well able to take them. So often, when we're in a place of great breakthrough, it looks like nothing or worse than nothing. It looks like the potential end. Okay, so that leads me to today. I'm asking the Lord, what are you doing in our community? What are you doing in our lives? And he said, here's one of the things I'm doing. You know how this has all been about nose to nose, eyeball to eyeball, cheek to cheek intimacy with God? Right? This has all been, we practice every week hearing God. We practice every week learning how to hear for ourselves, because there is more important than knowing about God is knowing God. And that's why our odd collection of people, we connect together, because that's our heart's pursuit, is to connect with God in a conversational, relational way every day. So I felt like he told me, here's where I'm going. And I'm just gonna tell you, I was really excited and also kind of not so excited about it. So he said, everyone's pursuing intimacy with me. So there's kind of a couple of things here. Everyone's pursuing intimacy with me, but there is a lack of intimacy happening within our community because of that voice of violence that finds a home when we get offended with someone else. So if you're not a regular part of our community, just a couple of you, I think God might speak to you about your community. But that voice of violence that speaks to you when you get offended with someone. And then it just does its work, right? To just rip apart the very fibers of the relationship. Because someone can be super, super great in your life, right? Until they do something that's not so great. And then you're like, oh, and then that thread got pulled, right? And then it starts to unravel more and more and more. And then you start to expect that they're going to behave in certain ways, right? And then, do you know what happens in our mind? Our mind starts to create a narrative and a story where we start to expect that behavior in other people. These are our issues of life, right? When someone's dishonest with us, and then we find out someone else is dishonest with us, and someone else is dishonest, we start to develop a radar for dishonesty. Some people are liars, and we start to become suspicious. Or if someone has betrayed us, or someone has left us or abandoned us, That becomes a story that we then continue to encounter and encounter and encounter. And we almost find it and draw it out in other people because why? We have an expectation of it. We almost have an expectation, and so it's almost like that expectation, that partnership in our life activates that behavior in someone else's life. So they might be super honest with lots of other people, but they find themselves telling you little white lies, and they can't really figure out why. And it's almost like we've almost like dared them. Don't be that way. And in the very daring, we've created an atmosphere that is violent to us both. Right? It's violent to us both. And then it pushes us apart. And so when the Lord started to tell me, there are offenses amongst us, I was like, that is not an exciting message. That's really, like, you all know, I'm all for and the Lord goes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because he said, this is what tears apart every relationship, every family, every community. It's the little offenses, the way that we raise our kids differently, the ways that we go on vacation differently, the ways that we eat food differently, the ways that we treat our homes differently, the way that we treat our cars differently. Oh my gosh, would we all like to go take a tour of each other's cars? Right now. Somebody's car would be meticulously neat, right? Somebody's car would be trashed, right? And there's like this much, I love you so much, right? Right. And you know what? It offends us. It offends us when we see something that's not like us. That's that voice of violence. That's that voice that says, judge what that other person is doing, move past who God made them to be, move past who they truly are, because I have just become offended. And I'm telling you, I have been at the mercy of this my whole life without ever even realizing it. And it wasn't until, now of course we all recognize it, so what do we do when we realize we're offended with someone? Come on, let's throw some things on the board. What do you do when you find out that you're offended with someone? Tell someone else. Excellent. Find someone else to affirm that you should be offended. Totally guilty. I have done that. I'm sorry. I usually try to do it outside of any community I'm in, by the way, just so you know, but well, not try to, I do. And I keep a lot quiet. But tell someone else has happened. Anybody in here participate in the tell someone else about it? How about post it on social media? Right? That happens.
Darby can't really.
Yeah, Darby cannot, but everyone else. Okay. Because you're looking for a little bit of affirmation for the that happened, right? When something happened. What are other reactions? Avoid the person. Yes. Avoid the person. Super good. It's not good, but it's super good response. What else?
Tell the person you're offended.
That would be so genius. Tell the person you're offended. I have done that.
After I tell someone else or post on social media, I say, this is ridiculous to myself.
Yes. So you shame yourself afterwards? Is that kind of what you're getting?
Well, yeah. At some point in my process, I'm saying this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Some point in your process, you belittle the offense that you felt. Yep. That's a really good point. Okay, yeah.
I don't feel offended, but I've heard that if you keep going over it and pleading your case to yourself, that means you're offended.
Yeah.
By the third time, I go, I must be offended. because
Right.
I keep
So when you keep ruminating and doing the story over and over again, you realize that you have gotten offended. It's like your cue.
and I'm a little, it takes me a second to realize I'm offended. I'm not
Yeah.
quick to it, but when I keep going over the details,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the right and you're not.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, that must be true.
That must be offense, right? What else do we do? Yeah. Do you want to run with the mic, babe, so people can hear?
Sometimes I just bury it and then don't realize it, and then I end up like in mystery.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so say that again because that is a brilliant one.
So sometimes I bury it and I like try not to, I don't think about it, and then I end up like really mistreating the person because I'm pissed off at them because it
Anyone?
just like festers.
Anyone ever do this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or how about this? Mistreat the safe person about someone else.
Oh, all of that.
Projecting onto someone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you are unaware. So the being unaware thing is a huge thing. Either burying it actively or consciously burying it because you have what? Judged it. And you don't want to feel bad about another person. You don't want to judge another person. And so you disregard it. Okay, what else? Anyone else? Erupt. And that, yes. And the burying doesn't work super great. Yep. Yeah.
Mistreat the person who offended you.
Yeah, mistreat the person who offended you.
Get even.
Yes, get even. We have so often allowed ourselves to abuse another person who we felt abused us without ever dealing with the core issue. Okay, yeah, Sammy. Oh, you're passing the mic? Okay, excellent. Kristen has something. And then we'll see where we're at.
So I think instead of mistreating the other person, I don't confront it, and then like I haven't put up boundaries with that person, and so then they just keep mistreating me.
Yeah, so I think what you're starting to tip onto is, how about addictions? Addictions that you have to cope with all the undealt with stuff in your life. So you don't deal with it, so you do something else instead. Escape behaviors like sleep, or excessive television watching, or food, or whatever behavior makes you feel better than actually dealing with the deeper issue that you're semi-unaware of. Or maybe totally unaware of. Okay, so I felt the Lord going after this issue in our community, and I was like, oh geez. And he goes, but Ange, think about it. In our extended community, of everyone who's here and then those who aren't here tonight, and then people that you don't know about that are kind of a part of our extended community, like Patty in Tennessee, and my niece Hannah who's in, Northern California, and like people who are part of our extended community, the ability for people to hear God and know that they're hearing God is dramatically different than it was 3 years ago. Like, we have a whole community of people who are very confident or fairly confident that they can tell the difference between their own voice and God speaking in their lives. That wasn't always true 3 years ago. We have a whole community of people who now know when God's speaking to them about someone else. We have this growth that has happened within this community of people who some didn't even believe God does speak today like that. And that has shifted and changed. We have a whole community of people who might have been able to hear God before, not community, but some of the people who heard God before, but it was a torturous experience. Getting holy enough to hear his voice, making sure that it was his voice, all the tension that happens, instead of it just being a normal part of life. That's happened. That is huge, because I personally know a whole slew of people who've been in church multiple times a week for 40 plus years who do not feel that God speaks to them personally. And in a few short years, people have grown from whatever place they started at into their understanding of God speaking in their lives, and the intimacy and relationship and connection that's possible. That's huge. And so I felt the Lord saying, it's time. It's time to remove the voice of violence in our lives. To remove the place of offense and the violence that we allow ourselves to agree with against other people. Because honestly, it just wrecks us. It wrecks our peace. It wrecks our joy. It robs us of our hope. It robs us of our sense of goodness and expectation for the future. So when we continue to allow that voice of judgment and offense to reside in us, it turns on us and rips us apart, but it continues to rip apart communities. And so I felt the Lord going after that. I felt the Lord saying, I'm ready to shift that voice from being a voice of violence against humanity to a voice of goodness that is for humanity in all of us, at whatever level it is that we're participating. And I'm not sure how this is going to be walked out, but I know that one of the things that's going to happen is that we get to become aware of the places where we have offense with other people. In our personal life, in this community, in our family, we get to go, hey, I have unresolved emotions about this, and this. By the way, we don't have to solve them. That's the beautiful part. That's what the Holy Spirit does. The Holy Spirit goes, okay, now let me show you how to walk this road. But some of us are offended with our own kids. Some of us are offended with ourselves. Some of us are, and so I feel the Lord going after those places of offense and going, it's time. Because it is difficult for a community of people to stand for the magnificence of humanity if we continue to harbor two different voices. It is impossible for us to create the space where a move of God can be powerful in our community, where people can come in and just experience the full presence of God, if we within ourselves are torn with a voice of violence that continues to get offended and tripped up every time somebody does something really wrong. Just wrong. Or in our assessment wrong. Right? And so there's things that cause these triggers to happen, and some of them are, and we'll just go through them really quickly, some of them are, and do you mind putting these, like the reasons why we get offended? Reasons why we get offended are on a huge range, so think of them for yourself. Pull out a card, if you don't mind, out of the bucket, and a pen, and you can write for yourself things that trigger me the most.
Having to write on a card.
You need to write on, you're like, I need the whiteboard. Things that trigger me the most. What are the things that trigger you the most? Yeah.
For me, it's always our boundaries and seeing other people that have boundaries.
Okay, so this is good. Go ahead, say it again.
My lack of boundaries, and when I see other people with healthy boundaries, it's very triggering to me.
Yeah. Because then you think you have to cover for all the stuff that has to be done when someone else has a boundary.
Yeah, and it exposes, it's a feeling of being exposed, because I know that I don't have that, and I feel bad about it.
Yeah. What triggers you? What are the funny, quirky, and serious things that trigger you? Mine is criticism. When I hear someone criticizing someone, that triggers me. Big time, which is why I can't watch almost any comedy on television, because sarcasm is all about criticism. Can't handle it. It triggers me. Yeah.
Another word for boundaries, I just realized, is when somebody's not codependent, it flares up my codependence even more.
There you go. That's a great explanation.
Yeah.
Wow. Excellent.
It's like it grows it.
And makes you
feeds
like
it.
freak out.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not codependent, then we don't have a way of working together. I don't know how to navigate this.
Yeah.
True that. That's good stuff. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah. Thanks, Linz.
Yeah, I think for me, being rejected or being ignored.
The ignored.
Yeah, but being ignored is probably almost, well, it's a type of rejection.
It's a tie,
It's
yeah.
probably the purest form of rejection, because
Yeah.
you're not even.
Yeah, right. It's not even
You're not
rejection.
even getting to the point where you
I
can
don't
be
even
actively rejected.
Warrant
Yeah.
your time. Okay.
Yeah.
This whole house thing has caused so many issues of mine to come up that I didn't know that I had. I thought I was so mature, and then the house thing happens and I'm like, oh, I am so immature. But when I don't have contractors or people call me back when they're supposed to, and I need something from them in order to move forward, and I don't get calls back and days have gone by, I got totally triggered this week, and I just went, okay. So oftentimes we use these kinds of experiences, like how about when somebody cuts you off on the road? What was that? You were like, it might be you. Can't relate. What about when someone doesn't say thank you for tons of work that you did? Yeah. Thanks, baby. Or doesn't appreciate work that you did?
And probably the same thing, disrespect.
Yeah, disrespect. Any level of disrespect, right, feels blah. So there's a whole level of these kinds of things, from real injustice to things that offend you to things that are just value differences. They're not right or wrong, they're just your values versus someone else's values. And they're not necessarily moral. One's not more moral than the other, but it's just your values. That's the car clean thing. That's not good or bad, it's just differing values and differing lifestyles. But man, can they hurt relationships. It can hurt relationships if you can't move past the differences. And so what I'm learning is that these triggers of these things are typically not ever about the other person. They're not about the other person. It's triggered what's in me. And it's my opportunity to ask the Lord, what is it that's in me that you want to work on here? And I